Welcome to the Global Speakers Advantage podcast, and this is your favorite podcast. And my name is Oliver Shaw. Today, with me, I have an incredible guest, and he is not any other person but the one and only Eddie Francis. Welcome, Eddie Francis, today, Global Speakers Advantage podcast.
Oliver, thank you so much for having me. How are you, Van?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, man, and thank you for showing up. You know, Uh, this is the Global Speakers Advantage podcast, and like you know already, this is where we give voices to global people. If you're a speaker, if you're an established speaker, an aspiring speaker, any part of the world you are, we bring in people like Eddie Francis that have been to the industry of speaking so they can share their best practices and new practices, experiences, so you can see what is working and what is not working, so you can know where to tweak and where not to tweak and where to maintain consistency so you can win in this game of professional speaking. And today we are so pleased to have Eddie Francis. And Eddie Francis, among the many caps that he is actually wearing, he is a talent communication strategist. He helped organizations transform employees' experiences into a competitive advantage. And so, if you're listening to us tonight or to afternoon, wherever you are around the world, in Africa, in Europe, in Singapore, in Asia, in the United States, in Canada, wherever you're listening, I just want to let you know that you should get your notepad ready, get your pen, and find yourself somewhere where no one disturbs or distract you, because Eddie is going to be pouring just a lot, especially if you're an aspiring speaker and you want to speak with confidence and you want to make a living speaking and sharing your story, whatever it is. Get ready and get your seat around the table because it's going to be hot tonight. So, my dear friend, with that any ado, I want to find from you, Eddie Francis, somebody who is listening to this podcast right now, and somebody who's going to be listening to this podcast as we dive deeper. What are the three things that any person can learn in the course of this 60 minutes conversation with you, Francis?
Ooh, the one thing I would say is that it is important that if you want to be seen as a credible speaker, a credible source of information, it's important, number one, to have some sort of proof that you are credible. The second thing that I would say that we're going to learn is the importance of having some sort of peer support to help your credibility. And there's this one thing that I always say, Oliver. I always say that success is a team sport.
Mhm.
You need people who are with you to help uplift you, but then also to help push you forward. That's the second thing. And then the third thing that I would say is the importance of mindset. It
Mm,
is very important for you that if you want to be seen as a credible speaker, to
mm,
be in the best mindset possible to
mm.
communicate to folks that you are that credible speaker. So those are three things that we're going to go over.
I love that. So if you're just joining us, you just heard from Eddie Francis himself the three incredible things that you're going to be learning about the mindset, about team spirit, and
Mhm.
of course, focus. And as we dive deeper into these three things, if you're a speaker and you believe that this is some of the things you've been lacking in your speaking professional career, friend, get your seat around the table and let's dive deeper. All right. So we already have Kevin Brown from Georgia Atlanta. Kevin is watching us from Georgia Atlanta through YouTube. We have Jean Damo Damus Singer. Smoothly interesting. He's watching us from LinkedIn. I guess he is watching from Africa. Okay, let us know which part of the world you're watching us from, even as we dive deeper into this very, very interesting, very, very interesting conversation with the one and only Eddie Francis, which has been in the professional speaking industry in United States of America for quite some time. And it's interesting for me to know that, for our audience to also know that Francis is actually based in the state of New Zealand. That is a phenomenal state I would love to visit in a short times to come right now. So Francis, many speakers chase credibility through stages and certifications, like you know already. What is the one uncomfortable truth about credibility that most speakers are not ready to share?
So before I answer that, let me make sure that I understand when you say chasing credibility through stages, what do you mean exactly?
when you go to most speakers, when I started my speaking career way back in 2010 in Africa,
Yeah.
I was told by most of the Western speakers in the global north that those who had the opportunity and the privilege to reach out to them on LinkedIn, I mean on Facebook and email, most of them made me to understand by then. They made me to understood then that you know you got to do a TEDx talk.
Yeah.
You have to speak in Europe, you have to speak in Africa, you have to speak in Asia, in America.
Yeah.
Ability. And a lot of people talked about the TEDx talk. If you don't learn a
Yeah.
TEDx talk, boy, you will not be having that credibility to get more gigs. So that's when I talk of credibility, those are the kind of things I mean, please.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that too, Oliver. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to start by addressing the TEDx thing.
Okay.
I know so many speakers who are doing very well in their careers and they
Mhm,
have never done a TEDx.
mhm,
I also know people who have done TEDx's and their speaking business didn't take off the way they wanted it to. And so, to address your question, when it comes down to how can, when it comes down to people, chasing credibility and they feel like they have to be on some sort of big stage or they feel as if they have to have some sort of certification, none of that matters if people don't trust you.
mhm,
Trust is one of the biggest ways to earn credibility
mhm,
because trust comes when people, number one, know that they can work with you. I
mhm.
mean, just doing some of the simple things. If
Yeah.
you say that you want to do a presentation, or if you say that you want to get on a podcast
Mhm,
and someone books you to do it, and for whatever reason you're a no-show,
mhm,
or if for whatever reason you give people a hard time in the planning process,
mhm,
you know, those are the types of things that turn people off. And those are the types of things that make people say, well, yeah, sure. This person has this great certification. Yes, they've done a TED talk.
mhm.
Yes, this person has a PhD,
Yeah.
but I can't work with this person. I
Mhm,
don't like them. I don't trust them. So,
mhm,
trust is extraordinarily important when it comes to building credibility. Now, how do you get trust? Like I said, number one, you do some of the simple things. You show up. You listen. You do exactly what the event planner was asking you to do,
mhm,
or you work within a network, and in networking with people
mhm,
you establish a network where people really trust you because again you do what you say. So in order to make sure that people know that you are trusted, having proof of that trust. So doing it through testimonials, uh doing it in a way that people want to speak your name in a room when you're not around and they speak your name favorably. Those are some of the biggest ways to gain trust if you can't get to that big stage, or if you don't have those magical certifications, or you don't have those magical credentials that you feel are going
mhm.
to push you forward. So I think that one of the biggest ways to gain credibility is trust.
This is interesting. I love that, and I love the things you've actually enumerated about gaining trust. You know, I was listening to a YouTube sermon somewhere from Pastor Greg, and he said something very important. Many people want to do big things, great things, giant things, but they forget to know that for you to do big things or bigger things, you just have to do little things in a bigger way. Just
Yes.
the little things. And when I listen to you, Eddie, you are actually talking about the little things that many people ignore and they believe that they're not important. I mean, showing up on time. And that
Mhm.
reminds me, last year I had the opportunity to work with one Fortune 500 CEO here in United States. We engaged on the deal, on the conversation, pre-meetings, a lot of meetings we had to do. And one of the times in one of the meetings before we closed the deal is we do not close the deal finally. She gave it to a different person, but she's still working with us, preparing us to work with her somewhere in the future. Now, there's something very interesting that happened, Eddie. I asked her this question. Hey, ma'am, what are the no-go zone for you? What are the things that you do not like to see in the people that work with you as contractors or as coaches and all that? She told me something I will never forget. She said, Oliver, if we're supposed to have a session, you're supposed to show up at least 5 minutes before the session. And if the worst come to the worst, I can wait for at least 5 minutes after the session. If after 5 minutes you don't show up, we are done.
Yeah,
We're done.
yeah.
Yeah, I like. Yeah,
So Oliver, to back that up,
yeah.
I had a speaking engagement in New York. It was
Okay,
at Farmingdale State College.
okay.
Before I did that speaking engagement, I called the planner,
Mm,
and the planner, you know, I'm going down a list of things, asking, well, what do you need? What are you looking for? What do you want the outcomes of this talk to be? And so he goes down this list of things that he really, really needs in order for me to deliver.
mm,
Now, I'm speaking to a group of students. And so I get up there the night before, I get myself together. The morning I show up, to your point, I show up, golly, 45 minutes ahead of the speaking engagement.
mm,
And so I'm walking the campus, getting to know it a little bit. And then I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty nervous about this presentation.
okay.
Get the presentation done. As we're doing the presentation, I'm going through this thing. I'm giving it all the energy that I got, right? And as we're going through this presentation, the audience, they have poker faces. I mean, their faces are really straight. I get a
Mm,
couple of chuckles out of them when I crack some jokes and that sort of thing. And I'm walking out going, I
mm,
really hope this went better than it looked. So I gave the planner a call afterwards to do a debrief. And I said, hey, I just wanted to go over everything to see how everything went. Now, I already got some good news before I even got home. The
okay.
good news was that I got very high ratings. On a scale of 1 to 10, they were around 9.5.
Mm,
But then when I talked to the meeting planner, I asked him, hey, just let me know what worked well for you. And he said, Eddie, I'll tell you exactly what worked well. You listened to me. I
mm,
told you what I really needed, and you
mm,
delivered every single thing I asked you to deliver.
mm,
You hit every single point that was a
mm.
concern. That's trust,
Yeah,
and so after the conversation, I asked him, hey, well, could you please share this with any of your colleagues at other colleges and
yeah.
universities? And he said, gladly,
Mm,
gladly.
mm,
I will let them know. To me, it wasn't about the presentation, it was
yeah,
about what I delivered.
yeah.
And that is one of the biggest ways to earn credibility. And I always say this to people. One of my favorite leadership quotes, and I don't know who to attribute this to, but one of my favorite leadership quotes is, don't be so worried about hitting the ground running so much as you should hit the ground listening. And
Mm,
so listening to what your meeting planners need, what they're asking you for, that is one of the biggest ways to earn credibility.
hmm. That's so deep, and that's really powerful. And that really leads me to this. This is very interesting. This is interesting. So somebody says that the best way to market yourself as a speaker is your next gig.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you did that, and you nailed it in that one in New York.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
brilliant, man. Yeah. So how have you ever worked? In fact, have you ever walked into a room where you looked confident on the outside but questioned your legitimacy on the inside? What shifted that actually led to that internal narrative for you?
Yes. So
Yeah.
I had to speak at a conference in Virginia. It
Okay.
was for the National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association.
Okay.
And
Oh,
so
wow.
that was yet another example of a
Hmm.
time when I had to listen very closely to the planner. And the
Mm,
event planner said, whatever you do not crack jokes about death. Do
mm,
not walk in and say things like, I'm going to knock them dead. Don't post it on your social media. Just don't do it.
mm.
great. And I'm a jokester, Oliver. I love
Okay.
to laugh. I love to
Mhm.
crack jokes. I love
Yeah.
to make people laugh.
Mhm.
But I knew I needed to listen carefully to this.
Okay.
That made me very nervous because I'm sitting there going, oh boy, what am I going to do? Because now I have to abandon this thing that I have in my head where I say almost the first thing that comes to mind sometimes. So I have to think very carefully about what I'm going to say. And it made me very nervous. I
Mm.
walk into the conference and I'm at the conference hotel. I was very excited because I had never presented to a group like this before.
Okay.
And I knew that there were going to be about 200 people in the room.
Mm.
So I am pumped. I am excited about this thing. To make matters even better or worse, depending on how you look at it, I'm
Yeah.
walking through the hotel and there's this huge poster with my picture on it on an easel. And I'm going, oh boy, this is serious now because now they're pumping me up. They are really promoting me for this thing. So
Yeah.
now I have to deliver. I don't have a choice. But
Yeah.
again, I'm thinking to myself, what in the world? What am I going to do? Because I've never spoken to a group like this before. So I
Mm.
walk in and I knew I looked confident because I'm doing my usual smiles. I'm talking to people as they're walking into the room. I'm
Yeah.
introducing myself to folks. And the way that I was able to get through it is that I simply talked about my expertise. I
Mm.
leaned them. The presentation was about public relations and marketing tactics that people who are directors of funeral homes could use, which I know it might sound a bit odd to some people,
Mhm.
but I had to think through this. And I thought to myself, Eddie, there's no reason for you to make anything up. Just talk about what you do every single day. You know how public relations and marketing works.
Yeah.
So just talk about it.
Mm.
And that's what I did. I was very simple in what I did. One of the things that really helped me out though is that I did as much homework as I could
Oh yeah.
about funeral homes and understanding how they worked. And I gathered a lot of feedback from social media
Mm.
about people's experiences working with funeral homes.
Mm.
And going through that feedback with that particular audience was huge. And that settled me down because I realized that I hit the right stride with them.
Mhm.
Now I'll tell you another thing that was really funny that really settled me down is that I had no idea, but in that session, one of the funeral directors who they honored at that conference was actually a funeral director whose family grew up around a corner from my family in New Orleans. And so I walk in
Oh.
there and I'm going, "Hey, Mr. Charbonnet, how are you?" And he says, "Hey,
Mm.
how you doing? What are you doing here?" And he and I going back and forth.
Mm.
And there was one part of the presentation I kind of asked him, I said, okay, there's this thing I'm going to ask about. Is this going to be stupid? And he goes, no, 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 go ahead. You can ask that question. And
Mm.
so that was another thing that settled me down. You know, I was able to get a little insight from somebody in the room about something that I could say that was safe.
Mm.
And so, in doing that, that's what really settled me down, and that's what really helped me with my credibility as well. You know, the fact that I just leaned into what I already knew how to do, something I had been doing every single day, and then just realizing that the other thing that really helped me out, and the other thing that settled me down from my nervousness. Was this very simple statement, Eddie? They wouldn't have asked you to do this if they didn't feel you could do it, if they weren't confident.
Yeah.
And so that's what really got me going as well.
Mm. I love that, man. And I just want to say a high shout to Kevin and Ellen Ube. Ellen Ube is watching us from Maryland.
Cool.
Yeah, United States. She's a great speaker. She's one of our team members. We work together, and she's doing a great job. Thank you
Hey
so much,
Ellen, how are
Ellen.
you?
Uh,
And I do have to give Kev Brown that ATL shout out. Kev, how you doing?
yeah,
Always good to hang out with someone from the ATL. Yes, I am a who dat, so you just need to know that. Okay, there we go.
great. I love that. Thanks so much, man. We work with a lot of speakers from different parts of the world, and one of them was asking me, that's kind of a beginner speakers from Africa, Cameroon, Central Africa, Cameroon. She was asking me just 2 days ago, what do you do when you lost your thoughts on the stage?
Mm.
Yeah, what do you do when you lost your thoughts on the stage? Yeah, what do you do? And I want to get your perspective to that. Have that ever happened to you?
Oh,
And
yes.
if that,
Yes.
how did you bring back yourself? How do you balance back things together?
So I'll tell you, one thing that a speaker should never ever be afraid to do is laugh at yourself.
Mm,
And one of the biggest reasons for that is it settles the audience down and it lets them know that you are human too. It lets
exactly.
them know that you have your points too when things don't always go right.
Mm,
But I'll tell you what, I was told this a long time ago and I didn't believe it until it happened. A coach told me a long time ago, Eddie, if you get lost or if anything happens during your speech, keep going. Just
mm-hmm,
keep going. Even if
yeah.
you have to take 30 seconds to gather yourself, keep
Mm-hmm,
going. And he said, because if you do a great job,
mm-hmm,
no one's going to ever remember that you lost your spot. They're not going to remember it. They're going to remember what you left them with.
mm-hmm,
This actually did happen to me probably this was probably one of the one of the worst stories for me as a speaker. In 2000,
mm,
I unfortunately received the news that my mother was not going to make it. She was going to pass away. I
mm,
had been contracted or I'd been asked to speak at a high school commencement. And I found out the day of the commencement that my mother wasn't going to make it.
mm,
So when I went to go do the commencement speech, right in the middle of the speech, I just broke down crying in
mm,
front of everybody.
mm,
I mean, I couldn't control it. And I remember looking to the side of the stage and the people who asked me to come do that commencement, they were crying too. Before
mm.
I know it, half the room was crying.
Ooh.
And I went ahead and I finished the presentation.
Mm,
And I just kind of, I'm not gonna lie, I hightailed it out of there. I almost ran out of the place, and I got my car, went back home, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I just dropped the ball so bad. This was a bad look. This was horrible. This was horrible. I got an email later from one of the people at the school, the principal, who said,
mm.
Mr. Francis, I knew this was rough, but you came, you delivered the speech. It was rough for you, but it was a blessing to us.
Ooh.
And so that really meant a lot. And then,
Mm,
like maybe 5 years later, I was at an event and and there was a guy who was at the event who was at that commencement. And he said, "Hey, I recognize you. You spoke at this high school commencement, and your mom. You had just gotten the news that your mom was going to pass away." And I said, "Oh God!" I said, "You were there?" He said, "No, no, 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 no." He said, "Everybody felt you. Everybody understood
mm,
you." And he said, "And you actually delivered your message really well."
mm,
So the thing that I thought
mm,
was a deal breaker and major and was going to go against me was something that people saw as part of they saw it as part of my speech. It was
mm,
part of my journey.
mm,
They showed appreciation for the fact that I was willing to be, vulnerable. I was willing to be authentic. I didn't stand up there and say, "Oh, don't worry about this, y'all," or anything. I didn't run off the stage.
yeah.
I finished the speech. And so when you get lost in thought during a speech, um, it's okay. Just tell yourself it's okay.
Mm,
Take that quick second. If you got to laugh at yourself, take that quick second to laugh at
yeah.
yourself. I don't know, people who might not be familiar with the actor Danny Glover, who might not be familiar with this. Danny Glover is an award-winning actor. I actually did a radio interview with him. I conducted a radio interview. He told me during the radio interview something that I did not know about him is that he's dyslexic. And
Mm,
so he told me that he would be doing award shows and he always asked people to give him the script ahead of time so he could memorize the script.
mm, mm,
And he told me that somebody gave him a script once and he was actually on stage and he had trouble reading the script. And he said, in that Danny Glover voice, "I'm sorry, y'all, my dyslexia is kicking in," And so he went ahead and he joked about himself, he joked
Mm,
about his condition, and
mm,
that put everybody at ease. So the thing you need to remember is that if you get lost, just keep going, take that beat, let everybody know that you're human. It's okay. And know that you are going to finish the speech strong, because that's what's really important. Finish it strong. Leave everybody with that thing,
mm.
leave everybody with that thing that they have to remember about you. And
Yeah.
so I think that's something to think about when you get lost in a speech.
Mm. Wow. Credibility. Being confident in your credibility as a speaker. I love this conversation. This is so deep. And what message do you have to those who fake it? I just hate to see when speakers are faking it. You know, as speakers, there are times there's what we call tongue tied. There are times speakers mess up. They're just human beings like any other person.
Hmm.
When some people mess up, they pretend. I mean, it's okay when you're walking up the stage and then you fall and then you pump yourself. You behave like you're just from the gym. You're pumping yourself.
Yeah.
It's okay, but again, there is a way that you can be authentic and people will feel it even when you mess up on the stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
But some people, they always want to show full false all the time. They are strong, they are able, they cannot mess up, they cannot make mistakes and all of that. And most of the time, audience will tend to hurt those people like, no, you're not
Yeah.
going to be
Hmm.
authentic. What message do you have for those people and for those kind of speakers that they always like to show strength, 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 strength? We are not saying that people should be making mistakes on the stage or people should be vulnerable all the time, but we're saying that if it happens, what do you do? Do you just claim that it did not happen or you want to accept it just like you just shared? What message do you have to those kind of speakers, Eddie?
So I'm going to say this as someone who's a public speaking coach. And this is something I work with speakers with all the time. There are two things I'm going to say. The first thing that I would say, I'm reading this book called The Power of Followership by Robert Kelly. And one of the things that he mentions in the book is that leadership is not something for heroes.
Mm,
If you want to be a hero, you don't want to be a leader. You
mm,
really don't. And if you want people to think that your heroism is part of leadership, that's not going to work out either. And the reason is there are more followers than leaders. That's why. And so when you are that speaker who wants to be a hero figure on stage, there's a way to do it, there's a way not to do it. But here's the problem. The problem is I think a lot of audiences have gotten to the point, and this is my second thing, where audiences aren't looking for a hero. Audiences are looking for a colleague. They're looking for a friend. They're looking for a trusted advisor, right? They're looking for someone to make them feel as if they're okay. And so when you spend all of that energy to try to be the hero and you don't want to mess up and you try to fake it until you make it, it doesn't work out. Now, here's where my coaching thing comes in.
mm.
If you're trying to fake it, the audience is going to find out anyway, because your body language gives you away. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can do to hide it when you're trying to fake it. There's absolutely nothing you can do.
Yeah.
I was coaching this one guy, and I was coaching him to speak to high school students.
Okay.
And I remember that the guy started out, he was starting to do his speech, and I'm working with him. And he goes, when I was in high school, I used to like to pop my collar. And I was like, stop, stop.
Okay.
I said, okay, so first of all, did you really pop your collar in high school? Did you really do this in high school? And he said, well, no. And I said, then why would you tell a group of high school students you did something you never did? Second of all, do you use the term pop my collar in your normal everyday speech? And he
Mm.
says, well, no. I said, okay, so you're faking, you're lying to him.
Oh
If that,
yeah.
if that is not a term that you use, please don't use it.
Mm,
Don't do it. Be yourself.
mm,
Be yourself. And so, when he was, I mean, and what he did was so theatrical, and it was, and I understood what he wanted to do, but I told him, I said, they are high school students, one thing high school students are very good at doing is they are very good at reading through all of the BS. They are
Mm,
so good at it, and they call it out every time. They
yeah.
don't care who you are. They don't care. You could be the biggest CEO of the biggest social media platform. You could be one of the biggest, you could be CEOs of one of the biggest companies. You could be you could be the richest man in the world. High school
Mm,
students don't care.
mm,
They will call you out on your stuff. And so when it comes down to trying to fake it through your speech, it's not going to work out. Be
mm,
yourself, um, and don't be afraid to, if you say to yourself, well, I'm talking to a bunch of people who seem really cool and very polished, and I'm actually kind of goofy. Be goofy, because
yeah.
actually that's what you got paid. That's what you're getting paid to be. You're getting paid to be
Yeah.
yourself. Because
Yeah. Exactly.
the meeting planner is saying, you know what, this is a really stiff audience. We need somebody kind of goofy up here. That's what
Mm,
they're paying you for.
yeah.
So you win when you are yourself. Now, sometimes, Oliver, it doesn't work. Sometimes you're yourself. The audience doesn't respond the way you want them to. And I would caution speakers on trying to get immediate gratification during a talk, because
Mm,
that's not a guarantee either that you've done a quality talk.
yeah.
You want people to get the point. So if you have a very straight-laced audience, very they're very conservative in their behaviors, but you're pretty goofy, but your goofiness is helping to make the point. That's what's really important. And if you don't get the laughs that you want or the chuckles that you want, keep on going. Finish that speech. Finish it. And leave them with the points that are important.
Mm,
Identify the problem that you want to solve, help them solve, and solve that problem for them.
mm. This is very interesting, Eddie. And when you're talking, I just remembered. I was watching through Dr. De La Toro's YouTube channel yesterday, and he said something very important in one of his videos. He said he talks about the feel, felt, found it framework, and it was so powerful. Like he said, most of your audience, like 85% of your audience, they will identify with you as a speaker in your down moments, in your struggles, in your pain, not in your wins. Only around
Yeah.
15% can identify with your wins. But
Mhm.
over 80%, majority of your audience, they will identify with you in your wins. So when you talk about your pain, your struggle, they will identify with that. And they will love to hear stories like that. Then you talk about your wins later, and then you're pulling them to your
Yeah.
wins now. And so he talks about the feel it, make your audience feel it, let them feel it how the feel it, the felt, and the found it. So until you get them from the feel to felt to the found themselves, you can never make an impression. And I think that really just talks so much about what he just said. You have to be yourself, because that is why they got you there.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
getting interesting. So we're having a couple of people joining in from LinkedIn. This is interesting. We have I'm sure this one of your buddies. He said good. He said good word, Eddie.
Yes, my man Chris Raposo. Hey Chris, how you doing, man? Thank you for joining.
Great. So Ellen said thank you for your transparency. This is cool. Wow, that's a profound statement. Great. Kevin is like exactly the racks to riches strategy. Yeah, this is interesting. So Christopher says from LinkedIn says this is amazing. Okay, so let's dive deeper. Eddie Francis. Um, if credibility did not come from experience, age, or popularity, where do you believe it truly comes from? And how can a new speaker assess it immediately? Because it is often said that most organizations and companies and event planners, they're looking for speakers with 10 years of experience, 15 years of experience, 25 years of speaking experience, or they're looking for speakers that have done a TEDx talk. They're looking for a speaker that got some international experience, has spoken in Singapore, in America, in Asia, in Africa. Now, What do you have to say to those who don't have that credibility, that
Mhm.
exposure? What can they do to immediately start getting gigs from you as an expert and somebody who has experienced that?
Yeah, and I'm gonna answer this the same way I answered your first question in
Yeah.
saying that I've also had someone call me and say, "Eddie, I would love to put you in front of this group because the people who hire speakers for this one group, they always hire people who have a certain type of doctoral degree. They hire people who have gone to a certain type of university." And they said, "But Eddie, you can deliver." And I said, "Great." I said, "Well, put me in front of them. I would love to speak to them." I said, "But why?" I said, "By the way, why? What's the problem with this group? What's going on with them?" And they said, "Well, they spend thousands of dollars on these people, and the audiences are never satisfied. The audiences say they are always let down because
Mm,
they feel like these people aren't connecting with them."
mm,
And so I'm still waiting to get in front of that group, by the way. But
yeah,
um, the thing that I would say is that if you don't have all of that other stuff, and let's call it window dressing right now,
yeah.
if you don't have all of this credibility window dressing,
Mm,
then what you do have that makes you credible is peer support.
mm,
And how do you show your peer support? Well, one way you do it is ask people to write testimonials for you.
mm,
You can place those testimonials on social media, especially if you're someone who has a LinkedIn audience.
mm,
Ask them to write testimonials for your LinkedIn account. Um, People ask people to do video testimonials for you.
mm.
Ask people, but here's probably the biggest thing is referrals.
Okay.
Ask people in your network to refer you to places where you don't have to really worry about people worrying about your credentials. But what they know is that someone trusts you so much that
Mm-hmm.
they're willing to put you in front of a group even though you don't have all the sexy credentials.
Yeah.
They're willing to put you in front of that group.
Mm,
Peer support is great, and one of the ways that you get peer support is network, network, network. So Oliver, it's the way you and I met, right? We met
yeah.
doing the speaker connections, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so Event Raptor. So you and I met during a virtual networking event. And for speakers, I think networking is a really, really important part of what you want to do to build your business. It is now. Let's be honest here, it is a long runway. In other words, it is going to probably take you a little bit longer than if you had that sexy credential that makes somebody say, "Oh, this person has a doctorate from XYZ University, one of
Mm,
the one of the 10 best universities in the world," right? And so if you it is going to take you a little bit longer. But here's the thing, one thing that is much more sustainable than having the types of credibility that would be age, or that would be some sort of degree or some sort of certification.
mhm.
Trust is something, again, I go back to trust is something that is sustainable.
Yeah.
It carries over time. Even though it might take a little longer, even though those peer referrals might take a little bit longer, it does carry over time. And
Mm,
so I think thinking in terms of the kind of peer support that you can get as a form of credibility
mhm.
is very powerful. Even though it might take you a little bit, it might take you a little bit to get some gigs out of that or some speaking engagements out of
Yeah.
that. It is something that is sustainable over time.
I love that, and I really love how the speaking industry is well structured and organized in United States. Um, this what you said is really really powerful. I think a lot of people are getting gigs from what you just said: networking, peer support, and 2 days ago I was in another networking group, and they put us into a group of six speakers, one from Australia, three from United States, yeah, others from other countries. And while we're pitching ourselves in 30 seconds, 6 word or 7 word, these kind of things. And I had kind of Lena is actually working here in United States. I think she's in California, and she has worked with Oprah Winfrey. So she does public speaking workshops, virtual public speaking workshops. And so I was like, I do work, the kind of work that Lena does is that kind of stuff I do. I coach speakers, I work with speakers. And Lena said something. She just said, Oliver, I have a lot of aspiring speakers that reach out to me for speaking platforms and all of that, and which I don't do that. So I would rather recommend you to those people that reach out to me, for these kind of things, instead of doing that, because I just noticed that you do that, and I don't really do that. I had people reaching out to me. And that is how we are connecting already. That is
Mhm.
how we're connecting already. And that is so powerful that the things that I don't do, Eddie Francis doing them, I recommend him to those people that reach out to me. And the things that Eddie is not doing and I'm doing, when those people reach out to him, he recommends me to them. You know, and then that's so powerful. That's a way that we're growing, where we're promoting and encouraging everybody, and we're all growing together. And
Yeah.
and thank you so much, Eddie, for bringing that out. That is so deep. And I also just want to thank Ellen Ube, which is one of my clients last year, and she gave me. In fact, I have one review on LinkedIn right now on the speaking and coaching stuff, and Ellen is the one who gave me, and she gave me 5 stars. Thank you so much, Ellen, for doing that.
Outstanding. And
Yeah,
that is a great thing. It is great to have that kind of activity. Yep.
yeah. Thanks so much, man. So let's look at this. What is one habit or mindset that silently destroys a speaker's credibility, even when their content is strong, Eddie?
Again, this is the public speaking coach coming
Yeah.
out in me, not rehearsing.
Mm,
That is one of the worst habits, not rehearsing.
mm,
I had this client I was working with once, great credibility, great stature in the community, great stature in his profession. When we talked about coaching, I'm going, well, why do you need me? What can I do for you? And he goes, I get so nervous when I'm speaking.
mm,
And as it turns out, that he had a bit of a stutter when he spoke.
mm,
So we are going through, we're going through all these warm-ups because I take speakers through a lot of warm-ups and
mm.
exercises, and we're doing it. And I said, okay, now it's time for you to present.
Yeah.
So, give me 5 minutes of something that you ordinarily talk about.
Mhm.
Come back in the next session and let's get ready to go. We're going to get on it, and we are going to go ahead and go through everything that you're talking about. We're going to go through all your movements. We're going to go through all of your articulation, your vocal dynamics. We're going to go through all of these pieces.
Mm,
And as it turns out, he came in, he started speaking, and he barely stuttered. And so he said, I just realized I barely stuttered. I said, well, why? He said, because I knew my speech. I said, you rehearsed. And he
mhm,
said, yeah. And he goes, I've never rehearsed before. He said, I would just get a speech, I would just write it, and I would go do it. And I said, no, no. I said, you have got to rehearse.
yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times, I have made the mistake, Oliver,
Mm,
of having a presentation that I needed to do. And I got goofy. I didn't rehearse the thing. I got up in front of people and I just got away with doing it. But you know what bothered me? I knew I could have done it so much better if I had just rehearsed.
yeah.
So that sat with me. That was in the back of my head, right? And even though people said, Eddie, you did a great job, I'm walking out of there going, but you
Mm,
didn't do the best job you could have. You didn't do excellent work, you
mm,
know? And so a really bad habit
mm,
that a lot of people have when they're speaking is they just don't rehearse their stuff.
mm,
There's some people, there's some when I coach people, one of the things I tell them is get in the mirror and rehearse and take a look at yourself. I can't look at myself. I just can't look at myself. Nope. Get used to looking at yourself. You have got to get used to looking at yourself. You have got to know what you look like in front of people. I'll
mm,
ask people to record themselves. I hate the sound of my voice, is what a lot of my clients will tell me. Nope. Get used to the sound of your voice. You
mm.
have got to get used to the sound of your voice. Rehearse, 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 rehearse. And so that is one thing that a lot of speakers need to get comfortable with. They need to get comfortable with rehearsing every single thing that they're going to do. They need to get comfortable with rehearsing, looking at themselves and listening to themselves. As a matter of fact, Oliver, you sent me the questions for this. I rehearsed the way I was going to answer some of these questions.
Yeah, I
And
love that.
so that is something that folks have got to get used to. And for those who don't like to rehearse, you've got to break that bad habit. You've got to get into the great habit of rehearsing.
Yeah. Whoa. You hit it, man. You nailed it. I love that. And that's the secret to championships.
Hmm.
Every champion from Olympics to Toastmasters, the secret is rehearsing. They
Hmm.
rehearse like they're gonna kill it.
So I used to. So one of the things about me from my past, I used to do stand up comedy.
Oh.
And when I did stand up, I would work with a lot of other comedians and we would all rehearse in front of one another.
Mm,
Do you realize that when you watch a stand-up comedian, sometimes one of the most spontaneous things that they'll do on stage, they've rehearsed it. They've
mm,
rehearsed it. There was this one guy I used to work with, and he would actually take a cigarette on stage with him, and he would rehearse the way he held his cigarette. And
mm,
when you watched him, you thought that he was just playing around and you thought that he
mm,
just had these things. He rehearsed all of that stuff. There were times that he would say things to the audience. He had already rehearsed what he was going to say to the audience, but
mm.
it looked so spontaneous on stage.
Well,
So that is what rehearsing does for you. It gets you so sharp. It gets you so, and if it doesn't get you ready any other kind of way, it gets you mentally ready.
yeah,
And so that is the value of getting yourself ready. That's the value of rehearsing. One of the best habits you can establish as a speaker.
man. Thank you so much for that. And so as even we get to the end of our conversation, I would love to know if you had to strip credibility down to one daily practice that builds
Mhm.
trust before you ever opened your mouth, what would that practice be and why?
Oh, I love this question. If I had to strip credibility down on one practice, it
Yeah.
would be consume something every single day dealing with your expertise.
Hmm.
Something,
I love that.
whether it's reading a part of a book that's related to your expertise, even if read part of a book, read an article. If it's not going to be reading a book or reading an article, then listen to a podcast that
Hmm.
relates to your expertise. Listen to what other people are saying about what's happening in your field.
Hmm.
um, you can also watch YouTube, or you can watch videos about, well, to see what people are talking about related to your field. But whatever you do, try to consume something every single day that has to deal with your expertise. That's something that I try to do on a daily basis. If it's dealing with communications, or if it's dealing with marketing, if it's dealing with leadership, one of those three things, I'll try to listen to a little bit of something every day. Actually, going through social media and looking at what other people have to say about what's happening in your field of expertise,
Hmm.
even if you completely disagree with them, which is really good.
Yeah.
If you disagree with them, then that helps you stay sharp, because you're sitting there going, no, 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 I think you really need another view on this topic. Or it just keeps you thinking. And I mean, I have books that I haven't read yet. I have bookmarks, in my browser for articles that I want to read on communications or marketing or leadership. I
Hmm.
mean, they're just all of these things, but I try to do something on a daily basis, even if it's having a conversation with my wife.
Yeah.
Sometimes she'll pick my brain and she'll ask me, well, why did this person do this? Why did that person do that? Or you know what I think? She'll give me her opinion about something, and we'll go back and forth about that. But just try to consume something dealing with your expertise on a daily basis so you can stay sharp.
That's so brilliant. I remember John C. Maxwell said something at the time very powerful. You get more opportunities in your life, in your career, the more you grow.
Hmm.
So you get more to your plate, to your table, the more you grow yourself up there. And that resonates a lot. And that's really, really powerful. And imagine that every day you learn a single thing in your career as a speaker. In 30
Hmm.
days, you learn 30 lessons. Like in a year, you're going to learn 365
Yeah.
lessons. Whoa, you can never remain the same.
Yeah, it's just like it's just like doing research. You are collecting data every single day.
Mm,
And even if it's the smallest piece of data, even if you look at a headline and you say to yourself, "Oh man, I want to come back to this because this looks interesting." You're still collecting some kind of data. And
yeah.
so getting into the habit of doing that data collection, just really focusing on something. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
And it can be something that you completely disagree with. I can't tell you how many times I've read an article and I've said, I'm not so sure I agree with all of this.
Mm,
That's fine too,
mm,
but just keep collecting the data, keep collecting the information.
mm. I love that. So where apart from the podcast and listening to YouTube, reading book, what are other ways from which people can learn in their own industry to get better?
I have the so I have this friend who just he just earned his doctorate, his doctor of
Okay.
education,
Okay.
and this man will talk your head off about his research if you let him. If you
Okay.
let him. And so talking about your field of your area of expertise,
Mm-hmm.
that actually helps a lot. It helps to talk about it because when you talk about it, number one, you're hearing yourself talk about it, you're hearing yourself process that information,
Mm,
and it keeps you sharp for when you want to do your next speaking
mm,
engagement, right? It also helps you sharp for when you are talking to someone who they might be a meeting planner, or they might be the person who can get you that speaking engagement, they might be in your network, and you have consumed so much of it and you've spoken so much about it yourself that at some point you might say something and they're going, "Oh, I've never heard it. I've never heard that before. I've never heard it put that way before." Now
mm,
to you it's an everyday thing,
mm,
but you just educated someone,
mm,
or if nothing else you gave them something thought provoking,
mm,
and that's worth its weight in gold. To be able to give someone something that is thought provoking, to be able to just process that information every single day, and then before you know it, you got your speaking engagement and you have so much information that you can put into that speaking engagement. You have no earthly idea how many problems you might be able to solve in 30 minutes because you are so filled with this information.
mm.
And so I think another way to really, really go about, getting this information together and consuming it is by talking about it as well.
This is interesting. Somebody says that how to know somebody's an expert and he is really the best in his industry is what you are able to learn when you sit with the person for 1 minute.
Yep. Yep.
A lot of people can take one single minute, 60 seconds, and teach you something that you cannot learn for 1 day sitting in front of 10 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
It
think
is.
this comes so much to what you're saying. You can only give what you have. So the more you know, the faster you can teach somebody to master even in 60 seconds.
Yeah. And let me tell you something. The more you can form opinions about your area of expertise,
Mm,
the more you can feed your knowledge about it.
mm,
Because I am a leadership nut. I have my master's degree in strategic leadership.
okay.
And so I can talk about leadership all day and all night. But one place I have landed that wasn't necessarily included in all of my studies, and it's an opinion that I own now, is that I always tell people leadership is a people oriented process.
Mm,
That is my one big belief about leadership.
mm,
That is the one big belief. It's my umbrella for thinking, it's my framework, and I work from there. And so every time I have a conversation with someone about leadership, it's just all of these pieces of information. I keep processing it. And by being able to build up all of that expertise, Oliver, there's actually a concept in leadership called expertise authority. And what that means is that you have the authority over that expertise that you have been working on, you have been studying it, you have been doing it. And so when you have that expertise authority, you have a very strong foundation to be able to learn on a constant basis. But then, to your point, you're able to just pull those pieces of information for any time that you do any kind of speaking engagement. So you get your brain prepped, constantly prepped to be able to build confidence in people and let them know that you are a credible source of information because you just own this piece of information. And not only that, by owning it, you develop a very deep sense of conviction about that.
Mm.
And that's something that people pay for. They pay for that conviction,
Yeah.
and so I think I think that being able to find ways to process it is also another big way you can build your credibility,
Mm.
and you can also build that trust that folks are going to be looking for when they book you for that speaking engagement.
Mm. This is interesting. And so, one last question for you, Eddie. Let's assume that you're 25 years and you're just launching your speaking career this year. What are the three things you're gonna do in a different way as you avoid the busy dangling, and then you're launching and you're getting to work like today?
What would I do in a different way? Is
Yeah.
that what you're asking? The first thing that I would do in a different way is I would own my credibility, actually. I was one of those people who had imposter syndrome
Mm.
because I had a passion to speak about the things that I wanted to speak about. I really doubted whether or not I belonged in a room a lot of times. And so the first thing I would do is I would recognize that I have imposter syndrome and I would deal with that imposter syndrome.
Mm.
The second thing that I would do is I would focus on my speaking mechanics a lot more too. So I would focus on how I move. I would focus on my vocal dynamics a lot more. I would focus on my articulation a lot more. The third thing that I would do is I would bounce a lot of I would really bounce ideas off of my trusted colleagues more too, because the more you can have conversations with trusted colleagues, the more you have people who are going to honestly keep you in check a lot of times because you can say something and your trusted colleague is going to ask you, is that really true? This actually happened to me. I delivered a speech once, excuse me, and one of my fraternity brothers was in the audience. And I'll never forget him walking up to me after the speech saying, Ed, that was a great speech that you gave, but I don't think that was you up there.
Mm.
And I said, what do you mean? He said, it looked like you just wanted to be really profound, and that's not you. He said, you say profound things, but you're not, he said, you look so stiff and you look like you were worried about something. And I said, you know what? I wanted to, I wanted to be taken seriously. And he said, you work too hard for it. And that was something that a friend told me because I invited him to the speech. And so he gave me such valuable feedback.
Mm.
And that's what bouncing an idea off of a friend or inviting a friend, someone who I really trusted, having him tell me that straight up face to face, that really, really got me to approach speaking in a different way. And so, yeah, so excuse me. So those are the things that I would do differently.
Thank you so much, Francis, Eddie. This has been a well spent moment together.
Thank you.
Francis, what are your parting words as we close the curtains of this conversation, please?
My parting words would be, if you are really serious about what it is that you want to talk about, then know what problem you want to solve for people, know how you want to address it. And if you know how you want to address it, if you know what problem you want to help people solve, then that's where your credibility is. And so be confident, know your stuff, and just be ready to own what it is that you know.
Thank you so much. This is D. How can people reach out to you for gigs, for bookings, for coachings, for mentorship? And
Thank you so much, Oliver. EddieFrancis.com, my website. Just go to EddieFrancis.com, and that's where you can find all of the information on me. And I really, really appreciate you having me, man. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. It is. I think it's good that our audience put it up there, so they can be able to pick that up. So you can reach out to eddiefrancis.com through the website. Yeah, and I think you're also on LinkedIn. For those who
Yes.
are watching from LinkedIn, they could check you out directly. Great. Eddie Francis, thank you so much. That was it today. Let us know which part of the world you're watching or watching from YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever platform. And if you're watching from YouTube, ensure to subscribe and like so that you can be able to see the next guests we're going to be interviewing right here at the Global Speakers Advantage podcast. Once again, thank you so much, Eddie Francis. You nailed it, and we are very grateful. And of course, we look to have you again here. Once again, the Global Speakers Advantage podcast as our guest. Okay, so wish you a wonderful rest of the day. If you're listening to this podcast, we want to let you know that we believe in your speaking career. We believe that you can make a living speaking, and we believe that you can travel around the world sharing your story and impacting lives. God bless you and wish you a wonderful weekend ahead. And until we meet again, see you.
Thank you so much.
Great. Awesome. So.